Hello, my name is Luna, and you're listening to Infinite Souls, a podcast for that real talk about consciousness, spirituality, and realizing our infinite potential. Mucho, mucho love and light. Hello, Infinite Souls. It is another Quantum Inquisitors takeover. Woo-hoo! Yes. Say hello, you guys. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. How are you guys feeling this Friday?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Obviously, it's 8 o'clock in the evening for me, so it's winding down the pad. We had an awesome thunderstorm 2 days ago. Me and thunderstorms is like me and the sea. It's like spiritual cocaine for me. So I've been wide awake and buzzing for the last 2 days because we've had well, allegedly, I don't know what cocaine's like, but for me, it's like allegedly like spiritual cocaine, where I'm now buzzing for the last 2 days. But anyway, over to somebody else.
I'm doing great too. I feel like this week's been intense with the energies, but I feel like today's a bit more stable for sure.
Yeah, I feel you on the intense energies for sure. I like to ask people like how they're doing. How are you? Because I feel like people don't get asked that a lot, and when they do, they're very superficial about it. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm okay, or I'm good, I'm fine. And or one thing that they say is I can't complain. And I'm like, well, you can, but you are not. You won't. You choose not to, because life is awesome. So I like to ask people that, even though it's just like a simple question, but I hope that everyone listening is doing amazing, and that these energies are not but fucking you. Because I saw it, sorry for the language, but I saw this video on TikTok. This girl was like, oh yeah, did you know that Mars is but fucking Pluto or some shit, and that's why all this energy is going crazy and blah blah, and she was like just ranting. So
for some people it is.
Yeah, like for some people it's very chaotic. And for me, hasn't been that chaotic, but I have felt the energy like in my body, like a lot of shifts, and they have been very powerful for the positive. And even though there has been like endings of like Ibo, for example, that I was before I was an influencer with them, and then that job, closed for me. So now I'm doing other things. But even though that was an ending, I saw it as like something positive, like, oh, now I'm gonna do something else. Like I didn't really feel bad or dragged down by it. Some people, some other influencers, they were upset, and some people, even cried, and with good reason, because we as artists, we're every energetic exchange. If we don't receive money enough to eat, then we can't fulfill that cup or fill that cup within us. So it can create some imbalances for sure, and very, very intense emotions. So a lot of things have come to endings, but endings are really beginnings, right? So yeah, I hope you guys are doing good.
There's a song that says that, actually. It says that every new beginning is another beginning's end. So the song Closing Time.
Oh, what is that by? Who sings that one?
Closing time.
Closing time. Na, 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 na. That one?
That one.
Yeah. I know which one. Well, time is not really real, right? So we're talking today about consciousness, you guys. That's what our topic is today. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into a bunch of other shit probably, because consciousness is limitless in my perspective. So Consciousness, that's a big word, right? What is it? What is it? I would like to ask each one of you guys, what is consciousness to you?
John.
Or
Wants to go first?
well, it's hard to. I mean, there's there's so much to it. Well, consciousness is ever expanding. You know, I feel like it's constantly trying to grow and expand, and on a soul level, that's obviously what we're doing too. But even like on a mortal level, like just our, you know, very limited fractal consciousness. I feel like we're always still trying to grow and expand and tap in. Like there's just an innate knowing that there's something more to our being than just like the repetitive 9 to 5, like, you know, sports, news, whatever. It's just something that drives certain people. Like they're just searching for more because we're constantly trying to grow and expand. And I don't know, it's just, we just know innately, I think, that I don't know, like a tree, like think about it, like everything in nature wants to, like a tree doesn't just grow to 5 feet and stop. Like a tree wants to continue to be the greatest tree it can be. It wants to continue to expand, continue to grow to the best and the most highest potential, you know? So, yeah, I mean, that's, I don't know how else to really explain it. It's just who we are outside of these bodies. Like we're not the body, we're not the mind, we're not any of these stories, the personality. Like we're just pure awareness, pure consciousness. And we're only aware of a tiny fraction of it. Like, yeah, you can't fit all of it in one body, you know, let alone 7.8 billion. So.
I know that's a fact. What about you, Sifu?
Right. So, according to the ancient ones, so the ancient ones were a culmination of Sanskrit, the Taoists, knowledge that came from India, from Buddhism. They all talk about these ancient ones, especially, you know, even pre-Atlantis, whoever they were pre-Atlantis, they were pre-everything. And the ancient ones talked about certain stuff, and even in the alphabet agencies apparently studied this information, and they came up with a very similar thing, that consciousness is that the unit source, God, whatever you want to call it, is collective consciousness, that there are multiples, unlimited amounts of consciousness. And each one of us is one part of that unlimited amount of consciousness that sort of rides this body, which is full of unlimited amount of consciousnesses. That the whole universe is individual consciousness inundated on itself. So it's consciousness upon consciousness upon consciousness. Each one of those is unlimited in lifespan. They have lived since the dawn of time, and will live far beyond this universe or the next. And they went, but the ancient knowledge talked about our individual one, the you that's in you right now, listening to this, that you have been here all the time, and you'll keep jumping into new bodies or new you know, be a rock, be a piece of water, be a flower, be a tree, be a person, be billions and billions of people. But you as consciousness are shapeless and formless, and you are bigger than the size of the universe itself. And when it comes to the body, that the body is so tiny and the consciousness is so vast, it is like trying to put a microscopic glove on your little finger. That's how big your body is compared to your consciousness. So that there's only one small fraction of you, that consciousness, that's in this body. But to experience this reality, we've actually sort of forgotten who we really are. That's sort of like the ancient knowledge, what the ancient knowledge talked about, what the Taoists talk about, and then through meditation and remote viewing, that's my perception of it all. But as any good Taoist say, what do I know?
That's absolutely beautiful. Yeah. That's just absolutely beautiful. I can't add anything else because you pretty much explained it pretty good. You both of you guys together. I mean, it's like consciousness is pure loving awareness. It's like it's not a physical thing, it's not your mind, body, you know, it's like the energy, this energy, this buzz, this power that exists in everything, right? And that allows everything to thrive and pump and pulse. So like this intelligence, this presence, which is your consciousness that's in us and everything, and it all is in existence. That's the thing that is pumping your lungs, and you're not even, because you're not consciously pumping your own lungs, you know what I mean? You're not consciously digesting your breakfast or your dinner. It's just happening for you, and it's fully supporting you, and it's breathing you into life. And that's what consciousness is, because it's so big, it's so, our mind can't even wrap our head around it with this mammalian brain. So that's why it's so hard to really explain. And science, quantum physics, and neuroscience and all that, they're really discovering a lot about consciousness and how, this energy that is consciousness is able to heal the body, reverse things that were irreversible, quote unquote. And so it's just a powerful thing. And we all have it, when I tell you, repeat the sentence in your head, and you can hear the sentence in your head, who's the one talking in there? Who's the one repeating it? That's the conscious self. And so we all have that. And a lot of people, when they hear about it, they think like, oh, woo woo. They don't want to, they think it's like out there, but it's becoming more common because science is proving it. Science has finally caught up with what spirituality had already known for billions and billions of years. So it's a beautiful thing. Now, I had written down some numbers, because we were saying that our mind, who was it that said, was it John, that our mind only perceives like a small amount of what is going on? And so the amount of like bits of information that our brain receives is 400 billion. Okay. And the amount that we are aware of in our awareness is only 2,000. That's a huge difference. Huge, if you ask me. So there's so much that we just don't know, and we're just beginning to understand. So I would be lying if I said I was an expert, or that I knew everything that there is to know about consciousness. Now, collective consciousness, that's like, that is, would you call that like the field? Is that what it is? Or it exists in the field?
So, right. Well, you got the quantum field. So, in 1973, the quantum physicists wanted to figure out whether atoms, whether we are separate or actually connected, and they sort of meant that, both physically and like spiritually a lot as well. And there was the whole there was a whole big shock back in the 70s that the atom, 99.999% of the atom, is nothing but empty space, which led lots of people, lots of famous scientists still today, and Elon Musk believes in what's called the simulation theory, that because 99.999% of this atom is empty space, they believe that we are a hologram, that the universe is holographic in nature. And hologram is literally like, something made out of light, and it can be, or watch Star Trek and you see holograms in there, and it's made out of light. It appears to be solid, but it's made out of light. And they led them to believe that, well, if we're holographic, we could be a simulation. Now, the the twist in the tale was that the information from they wanted to find out if it's connected or separate, and what they found in that 99.999%, they found what they called the quantum field, and the quantum field is in essence like subspace or energy that connects every atom to every other atom. And when they found that, it basically overnight proved ESP, proved proved telepathy, proved empathic, reading other people's emotions. It proved psychic abilities. It even proved the fact of reincarnation. It even proved like things like remote viewing. Were all proved because if this quantum field connects everything to everything else, then nothing is separate. Everything is feeling everything else. So everything, everything is connected. Now, what also freaked them out is when they started doing experiments on atoms, the atoms were moving out the way. And they said, it's like they're conscious. And they actually eventually said that atoms are consciously aware. So this is, in essence, what I was sort of saying about that connection is that everything's actually connected to everything else. And this quantum field seems to be, like an ocean. Like we're all in the ocean, we're all droplets of water in the ocean. And the ocean itself is the quantum field that connects us all. So everything is connected, but we react to everything as well. And that goes into something else CIA found out, but we'll get to that maybe.
Yeah, let's get into that. So what about Ascension? So I know that I want to get into Ascension because consciousness, the expansion of our consciousness as a whole is what is creating the ascension, right? Like that's what's raising our vibration and opening up those light codes and our energy bodies and we're crystalline structures and all that. Like I've read a few things. I don't know a lot about quote unquote what people have said about the ascension. Everything that I resonated with, I just in my mind, like sometimes I know things that I connect with, but what can you guys say?
So, well, the information that Linda Good McGillis has shared has been really eye-opening and very different than like most people have ever really explained it. And the way she kind of explains it, I can't do it justice the way she says it, but this is kind of more where I've really aligned myself, just because of many reasons, but so supposedly we had the big solar flash in 2012 and we ascended in 2012, but every time there's been a pole shift like this, we've annihilated ourselves like every single time, life on the planet has to restart or whatever, like humans can't continue to exist. But this time, since we're ascending with her, we're shifting with her, with Gaia, the planet, in a way, we've been walking through the Hall of Records since 2012 and dealing with basically like almost like a living past life or a living, how does the Dolores Cannon mention, like past life, like we go back and you read your past life and you see it through everyone's eyes and you kind of replay your karma, whatnot. But so we're sort of like doing, living life review. So we're doing like living life review, kind of almost like slowing down time and elongating it so that we can slowly take in all the energies of the pole shift instead of all happening at once, giving our bodies a chance to increase in frequency, increase in taking in more and more light, shift ourselves so that we can, otherwise our bodies wouldn't be able to handle it all at once. And that's why, with the pole shift slowly starting to become more physical, I think at the next year or whatnot on a etheric level or energetic level, it's the people who've been really doing the work, really emptying out their vessels of the emotional trauma and the emotional baggage that we're really, all that density that we're holding on to, we're able to handle in the increasing of light because it's only going to continue to accelerate. It's not really going to slow down ever. Like it's not going to happen, obviously. And with that, naturally we'll get all their, those activations of our DNA. Like we don't have to really do anything other than just continue to raise our frequency and, the reverse aging, telepathy, whatever, like there's whatever, I don't know, hopefully, being able to fly or levitate one day. That'll be one of the most exciting things, I think. But I don't know. And then obviously we're going from like a 3 to 5% human intelligence brain capacity to like a 15 to 20%, which is going to be far more than we're even used to. Like the 3 to 5 to 15 to 20. It's like you know, all the information that we've taken in from this point on is not going to agree with the 15 to 20%, you know, of information that's coming in from the quantum field or whatever. I'm not sure, with solar radiation. However, that information is entering in our bodies. So it's like a lot of people are going to have a lot more like cognitive issues, like obviously you're already seeing more people go psychotic, depression, suicidal ideations. Like it's a lot to handle. Yeah. So yeah, but there's so much more to talk about with Ascension. You can go on forever. But yeah.
I have a question. So I'm curious. So you said that they mentioned a life review, right? After, so our consciousness never dies, right? Their consciousness is always existing. It's infinite. It's always existed. It was the thing that replicated itself at the beginning of time, right? Yeah. And so if you're having a life review, this is your consciousness that's having a life review of your life here on this earth, or what? Because if you believe in past lives, are you reviewing other lives too? And then if time isn't linear, if time doesn't exist, then what is it that you're reviewing? Like how?
From my understanding, it's because we're ending like one complete era of like time, like to a whole new like sun grid. So like everything of this entire past world, that information no longer even matters. We can decide to leave it or carry it into the new age or whatever the next, I don't know, the fifth dimensional new world or whatnot. So I feel like we're healing basically all the things that we've done from like prior to, since we've descended, since like Atlantis, Lemuria and whatnot. I think, you know, all those lives, we hold all this karmic density that we need to shed. It just kept carrying it on because we kept having more and more incarnations, more and more children. We continue to reincarnate into new bodies, and all that on a DNA level has been basically multiplied or whatever, continued to follow us. And that's why it's so important that we shed all that density, because basically, you know, from my understanding is at some point we won't be having to continue to reincarnate. You know, it'll be more like a eternal life in a way. I don't really know the information on that, but but I do know it's we're going to eventually to a period of no more incarnation, except unless for, you know, those who don't want to, obviously, who want to continue to live in, you know, other dimensions of of existence and realities. Yeah. But,
what you got, Sifu?
Right. I think it's in. Yeah. I mean, the certain things to sort of get your head around is like, if we, you know, I very much believe like the Taoist point of view, the Buddhist point of view, and certain things that have been said by the FBI, CIA, is that if we are collective consciousness, if we are source created itself, we are the omnipresence. If we are creator, then ascension, ascending, going up. We're not going up, we're actually going back. We're going back to being what we really are, which is the source creator. Now, again, if you go by the ancient saying that every single consciousness is both individual and connected and collected, but every single consciousness is bigger than the universe itself, then ascension is expansion, is expanding your what you can see, what you can perceive. And there's a lot of psychology, well, there's a lot of philosophers asked about when you expand your awareness, expand your perception, expand what you perceive, you can expand what you're aware of. You see more, you understand more, then you learn more. And like this whole thing of, we sort of mentioned it before the show about like learning, all the things I've learned. My Sifu's taught me the more you learn, the more you grow, the more you grow, the more you flow. But always remember, hey, what do I know? And you hear me say that a lot, that joke. But it's that, you know, don't let ego limit you by thinking, oh, I know everything, I know, because there's, you know, I'm one little tiny speck on a universe that is infinite. So there is so much to learn, there's so much to grow and expand, but there is no limit to how much you can expand to grow. So I feel on and you know, I've studied things like Ra, the law of one, which is channeled information, and that's quite heavy because the guy who I was asking the questions was literally a physicist, and this physicist was asking this entity questions, and this entity was answering these questions in a very scientific way. So, but the real crazy thing about the law one is that since 1983, when it came out, I think it's around about the 80s, a lot of science that it was talking about has actually been proven to be right. So it's this idea that in the law one, that everything is conscious, everything is collective, and our idea is to expand and grow more and more and more, but there is no limit to what you can know. There's no limit to what you can expand to, but there's a lot of talk of our perceptions rule our reality. So if you know, example, if you wake up and you think, oh, it's going to be a really shit day, you're more than likely going to be right. You know, if you focus on the negative, and there's the whole thing of law of attraction, the whole thing of epigenetics, we actually know if you focus on the negative, you're more likely to make it happen. To the fact that in epigenetics, if you focus on fear and scare, you know, scarcity and loss and anger and frustration, it will literally break down your cells. It will literally actually deteriorate your body. But flip it, focus on positivity and love, and the totally opposite will happen. There's even these cool videos. There's a medicineless hospital in China where they were literally, Greg Braden did a video on it, and they're literally, they had tumors. This person had a tumor, and they literally dissolved that tumor in 5 minutes. And there's people around, and they helped do it. But it's like, if we can do that, what else can we do? You know, like, you know, it's like the things, and like all the marvelous things we created, the planes and you know, bananas. Well, we didn't create them, but you know, atomic bombs, toothbrushes, everything we created. But what else? What more can we do? What more? So the expansion, I think, there's no limit to expansion. But I think what happens is we limit ourselves through, like, say, time. Science, quantum physics says time doesn't exist. That the human mind perceives things in a certain way, but actually it doesn't exist. And even to the fact where you think when you fall in love, you know, or when you're really happy and time slows down or it speeds up. So does time really exist? Well, what is actual time? You know, and you know, you can both, well, you know, a week can feel like a year, can also feel like a second ago. So what, you know, if that's what is, if time doesn't really exist, what else doesn't really exist? What else are we perceiving in a certain way and making things, you know, happen in a particular way? So when you start dropping things, or, you know, you start perceiving things a different way, or you start opening up your ability to see stuff, the world changes. Your perception of the world changes, and that's the biggest, like, thing in a lot of this knowledge. They were talking about, don't say, even to good and evil. What is it? If this is a computer game, if this is a simulation, so therefore we're playing the game, then does good and evil really exist? Because if we're just if we're a being experiencing itself, and you kill another being, well, if that being's immortal, if we're all immortal and we live and die over and over again, so actually you can't actually kill me. All you can do is kill my avatar right now, but then I come back in another avatar. So actually, what is good and evil? What is reality? What is, you know, what is it all? When you start, you know, that's that interesting thing. Or certain people with on DMT and whatnot, they start saying that reality melts, that things change and alter. And I've had meditations. I'm not one for really drugs, but I know that our brain actually creates DMT. It creates adrenaline is actually 8 times more powerful than cocaine. So we naturally create drugs that can literally change our perception and our reality. And you know, that is expansion. To me, that is all. You can ascend every single day, twice every day. and at least twice every day. What is ascension? Ascension is just expansion, expanding your awareness. It's a little bit like that word enlightenment. Back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, instead of ascension, they used the word enlightenment, and they saw it as a one-off thing. And there's an old joke where a Sifu, he meditated every day, he did the garden, he did his qigong, and he meditated. And one day he woke up and he became enlightened. The next day he did his meditation, he worked in the garden, he did his qigong. Enlightenment is just one step, and I think for me, ascension is just one step of a billion steps. So you keep growing, you keep expanding. It will happen. Things will turn upside down. More things to experience. You're just here to grow, baby. Just keep growing and flowing.
Growing and flowing. Grow with the flow. So there are different levels of consciousness. We all know this. And I think that everything is conscious, because everything is energy. Everything, if particles are just pure energy, it's not really empty in there. It's, to us, it appears like a void or emptiness, but it's filled with something that we can't see or observe. And when you change your perception, that's when your level of consciousness changes. Right? Because then you're living this life that you have been living, but you're in a different reality, in a different dimension, in the 5D, right? Or whatever dimension you go to. So if the ascension is going to the 5D, or is it just we're continually ascending, infinitely ascending? Or like, I don't know. What do you think,
John?
I was just gonna say, well, yeah, I think we're continuously ascending. There's a lot more that I feel like this is a very drawn out process. It takes however many years, I don't know. No one really knows. But as we physically shift to a higher frequency on a land level, and then within our bodies, then we also gain more access within ourselves to, say, whatever 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th dimension, whatever it is. I feel like it becomes easier to gain more access within us to higher dimensions past that. So and then I'm sure once whatever existence you're living when you're in those dimensions, if it's more what we call physical, then you have access to something greater. Like, I feel like since consciousness is always expanding, you're always able to tap into something greater than what you're more, dominantly in. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So yeah, it keeps going.
Yeah.
We're only aware of just ourselves. We're learning how to become one world soul, how to become one unit, because it's like people want to meet aliens and whatnot, and continue to expand to other interdimensional, higher dimensional beings. And it's like, yeah, but we haven't even mastered us being one collective consciousness together yet. It's like we can't give a gun to a child who can't use it. Like, we're still children where we're at right now in terms of consciousness.
Yes, we haven't expanded our consciousness as far as a lot of people like to think. And I think that we see how society has changed, and technology has helped, I think, because it did good and bad, if you want to call good and bad, quote unquote, but because I don't think we were, as a society, we were completely ready for all the technology that we got so fast. And so a lot of people got introverted, depressed, and things like that, like the youth, the young people. But that darkness, or that shift, that total changed everything, changed perception, which changed consciousness. And so we were able to communicate and share our consciousness in a physical form, where we can see hey, even time and space isn't real. Like we're having a conversation right now. I'm looking at you and we're conversating and I can feel your energy. Like we're in the same room, even though we're on a Zoom call, you know? So that it has helped in those ways. The way that when Sifu was describing, you said that in the beginning when you said about consciousness that we are remembering, like that we're going backwards. So is it because it's like a spiral and like we're going repeat, like, because this is the way that I saw. So when I think I made a little picture here and it has like a circle, and then two lines like connecting the two circles. And it's like kind of, that's like what like an infinity sign kind of looks like. And because when I see us as an energy source or an energy being and our beginning, I see it like the Big Bang, right? Like the Big Bang, like a spark of light, like, you know, you light a match or something. And that spark, and then it just expanded and it kept expanding and multiplying itself and recreating itself, but the whole is in each part. And so if we're going back, but we're going forward at the same time. Like in a spiral, right? I would say.
Yeah. It is a spiral. I mean, so like Ra talks about this. Ra and the Law of One. The Taoists talk about it. The ancients. So when I say going back, so that before everything, you had the source, God, banana, whatever you want to call it, the Tao, and it wanted experience. It wanted to experience to be separate, because it was collective. It was a collective consciousness. And a lot of religions, they talk about this collective consciousness. They actually talk in you go to like their, you know, right to the bones, they talk about God being light, or God being multiples of, you know, it's everything, it's conscious. And they wanted to experience to be separate. So it created the universe to be separate. So if it created the universe from itself, so God, you know, and like in Hebrew, one of my teachers, Ezekiel, he actually said he would go nuts when people said like God created man in his own image. So that's never, it does not say that in Hebrew. It said everything is in the image of God. Well, let's ask that question. How can everything be in the image of God unless everything is God? So that every atom, every cell, everything is God. So when I say about going back, is that it separated itself to become to feel the reality of being on its own, not being connected. So like you're here on earth as a one single consciousness in a body that you're totally not connected with everything. So you were God, you were that, and so you're going back because you're going back to what you already know, but you've forgotten that you know it. So it's it's an oxymoron there, but you know the whole idea is that it's spiraling like back round, but it's that fear of this is you know, and there was this interesting thing there was, or they say that this is why you have this is why you have addiction, you know, like where people get addicted to stuff, to whether it's sex, drugs, rock and roll, whether it's a certain religion, whatever it is, the addiction is because they're desperately trying to fill that gap within inside themselves. You know, that's why people feel alone or angry or desperate, because you feel empty. And the reason you feel empty is you used to be everything. You used to be that connected, the source, and that's that thing you're trying to fill, that void you're trying to fill, is that connection with everything. The irony is it's still there in the quantum field, says that everything's connected to everything else. It's just we're blocking that information. And when they did medical case studies, they actually found our pineal gland is actually an eye. It's literally an eye. They actually found there's an actual optical nerve that goes to the pineal gland straight into our brain, and that sees infrared and ultraviolet. But and they found that on the MRI scans. But well, if we can see infrared and ultraviolet, why aren't we seeing it? We've shut that down somehow. They actually know that there's the bioelectric field, just like birds and bees can sense the magnetic pole. Humans can do it too. It's actually drawn in from our feet, and it affects our heart. But again, therefore, why don't we normally feel it? Something's blocking it, something stopping that information. So that going back is getting past. You actually go into the hero's journey, and it's the whole thing of the dark night of the soul, and you get through. Firstly you're resisting the call, you're resisting that information that how could I be the universe? How can I be connected? How is that possible? But eventually, you get through that information, you learn, you grow. I just wanted to say one more thing, and then I'll shush. Is that two very small things ish. Is that there's a thing in both the CIA, FBI. They actually talk about, instead of extraterrestrials, they actually believe they're extra dimensionals. They're actually from other dimensions, and hence why, and even to the fact where like unicorns, fairies, Bigfoot. I once joked with a alphabet agency saying, when are you guys going to admit they exist? And they said, Boggie, you know as well as I that there are different dimensions in this reality, and these beings slip in and out of those realities all the time. And that's what NASA reported just 2 years ago, that they have discovered 14 different dimensions that contain life. And then that's it. They very quietly slip that information in. And what they mean is they found 14 universes, different realities that exist, and life can pass through them. And there's certain places, certain portals on the earth that things can pass through. Now, which leads to the other tiny little thing I was going to say. When I'm at my best, when I was doing 18 hours a day Qigong, and like Bruce Lee on cocaine and on acid while on a skateboard, these very cool things. And one of the very cool things I could do, I would meditate, sitting there meditate, and the girlfriend at the time, we had a little falling out, and I was on a bench in a big campsite, and I started meditating. And there's a certain thing I know to do, like make myself feel lighter, and I feel my energy feels very light. And she kept walking past. And then eventually, after about half an hour or so of her walking past, she stopped right in front of the bench I was on with one of my mates. And said, "Where's Boggie?" I said, "Well, he's got to be here. There's nowhere. We've looked everywhere else. He's got to be here somewhere." And I suddenly I opened up an eye and said, "Guys, I'm here." And they almost shit themselves. They almost pooped their pants, because they said, "Where did you appear from? You weren't there." And I later found out is that it's a Taoist trick, that you raise your vibration so much that you can change your frequency, that you no longer appear at a certain vibration. And you actually heard that story is very similar to a story the American Indians told of originally they couldn't see the ships in the ocean, when they were first coming, it was even before Columbus, but when the ships were first coming in, that the Native Americans could see, the shamans saw them, but the natives couldn't, and the shamans had to keep bringing them every single day for I think it was a couple of weeks, until eventually they could start to see the ships on the horizon. That they actually had to change their vibration to be able to see those ships. And going back to that whole thing of like like that our pineal gland can actually see infrared and ultraviolet. I think we have to change our reality, our perception of things, to get things. It's a little bit like getting a joke. Is that at first you might not get that joke, but then when you told a bit of story, or you told her, "Oh, that's what you meant. Oh, I'll get it now." Still not funny, but I get it. And it's that whole thing of when our reality changes, what we see changes, our perception changes. So there you go. That's a Boggie story.
That makes sense though too, because from my understanding, there's all 12 or all that physical dimensions, whether it be like a light body or whatever, anything like angels, whatever like the higher frequencies would be, they all exist in the same space. And like we only see like less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum. And it's like so it's very like plausible now that knowing that like there's trillions of beings looking at us all at the same time, all right now. We just can't see them. When we think we're alone in the bathroom or doing whatever, like there's trillions of beings that can see you. And that's hard to fathom, right? Because we just can't see most of light that's around us everywhere, It's crazy.
Well, that's so amazing, isn't it? That blew. That's one of the things that definitely blew my mind when I learned that only we see less than 1%. Because when people hear that, they think, "Oh, you mean in space?" Oh, we only think, no. Literally, 1% of what actually exists.
That's what we know of.
That's like mind blowing. That there's so many things, atoms flying in front of you, but there's also different energies. You ever get a ghost cam, one of these cameras that's the infrared and ultraviolet? I had a friend who took me for a walk. We went for this walk through the woods and whatnot. Yeah, really nice. We got back and he played back the camera, and there weren't just like ship sort of weird things, but there was actually creatures that flew past the camera. Something like that almost looked like a dragon, a Chinese dragon that flew past. Something that was like an orb, something that was like a bat. And he said, "You're telling me that's in infrared and ultraviolet?" So there are things out there all the time that you're not seeing just because you haven't activated that part. It's there. The pineal gland, it's there, and it's literally, they were finding this with the people they did these MRI scans with were normal everyday people. They weren't nuts like me. They were normal everyday people, and they could see, they were flashing infrared and ultraviolet, and the camera was put. The MRI scan was saying it was going through into their pineal gland. The information was going, but their brain wasn't storing the memory. So they could see it, but it wasn't being registered. And how many times something in the corner of your eye? You go, "Oh, I'm sure I saw something." I'm sure. Yeah. And people go, "Oh, you're just imagining stuff." No. No, you're
no, they're real. I've heard that there's 24 dimensions. I don't remember where I heard that, but I think there's there's people that are connecting with these type of beings that are watchers and timekeepers or something like that. And they exist in those higher dimensions, and they're like I don't know what else to call them, but like programmers, you know what I mean, of this quantum universe. So that's something to look into. I'm definitely going to look into discovering about more like of our dimensions, how many more dimensions there are. The CIA dropped that there's 12. So official, or how many?
The CIA dropped back in the 70s that they've identified, meaning they know for sure that there was 12. NASA 2 years ago said they identified that there was 14. But it's a bit like saying, oh yeah, there's definitely more than 5 people on the planet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you how many, but it's definitely more than 5.
Yeah.
So it's like they identified something, but identify doesn't mean that's it. It's just, we know there's this many. So it's a very interesting thing, and like there are bases. There are known bases, like, well, let's just say there's known areas like Alaska, or actually, well, not just Alaska, Antarctica, I actually meant to say, but Alaska as well. There are places where they've banned people from going.
Yeah, you can't fly over Antarctica.
Well, it's this. Well, but what if it's a ban from going? Because
and now that, sorry to cut you off, but Antarctica, now that the ice caps are melting, they're seeing the pyramids there. Like they're seeing them just from the sky now. As before they had to do like scans.
There's 134 pyramids in China. There's 130. I've been to some. I've been to some of them, and China back in like, especially back when planes started to come. Especially when the communist government moved in the 1900s, they put earth over a lot of the pyramids and made forced the farmers to farm them to make them. So when the planes went over, they just thought it was weird triangle-shaped fields. But there were actually pyramids, and they've got pyramids from the Egyptian style to the Mayan style. The step pyramids. They've got all different types. That's probably another show on its own. What are pyramids? And,
yeah, because I'm trying to connect it back to consciousness. I'm saying, so if consciousness works, okay, it's not expanding linearly, right? Because that's just not how existence is. But so then what consciousness made the pyramids? Or who's like, what were they advanced already on this earth, and then they didn't pass a certain lesson, so then humans had to come reborn again. Like, this goes back into reincarnation, what you guys were talking about earlier. And so my whole thing is that I don't know if reincarnation is like something that everybody has to do, or if we have free will after this consciousness leaves the body, if we have free will whether to choose to come back or to stay. But I guess that would depend if you are a being that's existing somewhere else already, because I believe there's beings who are existing somewhere else in another planet, but a fractal of their being is here, existing on Earth to help with the ascension. So yeah, I know that's a mouthful.
Oh, that's a big rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because does time exist? Because like think of like somebody said about, oh, what about new souls? We say, okay, well, say the universe, like if everything is been around since the dawn of time, but you think, well, I'm going to wait the count of 3 to enter before I join the universe. So that count of 3 could be 8 billion years. And then yet you've come in at 8 billion years, and everybody else has done 8 billion years of lives. So you come in at that, so that's your beginning. So yeah, because if time doesn't exist, then you could just do one life. You could just do one, but that one could either be just one bit in those billions of years, or you could be a universe for 8 billion years. I'll be the universe. I'm only going to be one thing. I'll be the universe. Or be an atom. Because atoms, according to Einstein, energy is not, because this is what you have to listen to, is what scientists say. Einstein said energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred or transformed. So if energy can't be destroyed or even created, and everything is technically energy, even our consciousness is energy, so that means we can't be destroyed. So we've been around forever.
Mm-hmm.
Before this universe.
Exactly. And we don't know how long this universe, there's so many things, there's so much more that we don't know than there is that we do know. I mean, Göbekli Tepe. Have you heard of Göbekli Tepe? It was an ancient site that was an ancient site that was discovered. It was actually buried. I think it was 20 to 30,000 years ago. Buried 20 to 30,000 years ago. So it existed, and then they buried it. They buried it in the earth to protect it. So it's like, hold up, the pyramids are only supposed to be 5,000 years old, and this is 20 to 30, and it was buried. Or the other cool things I like is like, there's parts of the ocean, like around like Greece and whatnot. There are buildings they found under there that are 300 feet underwater. 300 foot underwater hasn't been on the surface of land, hasn't been land for over 300,000 years.
Yeah.
So there are literally, you know, like pyramids and things they found under the 300 foot underwater, and anything under 300 foot of ocean has not been on the surface for 300,000 years.
And
There's so much stuff.
Why have the powers that be, or those who we do not mention, why have they covered the pyramids? Why have they kept this this awareness away from us of, you know, knowing that the pyramids are older, that pyramids have always existed, or that other?
So I think there's a couple of things that sort of hint why. Okay, so I always remember the name of one and forget the name of the other. So there's a Brookings report. The Brookings report was before NASA. When NASA was formulating, when they're going into space, the Brookings report was asking scientists, psychologists, and theologists, people who study religions, what would happen if we found alien artifacts or alien life in space, on the moon, or anywhere in the future, on any planet. And the Brookings report stated that while there's still religion, while we still have the issues that we have now, they basically said that it would destroy society. They truly believed that knowing, that knowing that there is alien life, or knowing there is even just alien artifacts, that other life had existed, they truly believed, and this was back in the 60s, they truly believed that that society would crumble. They didn't think we could handle it. Now there's another report, a similar one, with archaeologists. Now that one I always forget the name of. I should have looked it up, I forgot. But there's a report that goes back to when it was actually American archaeologists in America that were looking at stuff like the American Indians and the Native American Indians and whatnot, and they were looking at stuff. And there was this guy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but there was this guy who was very well known in America, that was an archaeologist, and he basically said that anything that, they basically said that, like we grew at this point and we advanced to this point, anything that contradicts that information should be buried. That should be ignored and buried. And it was like I said, after this recording, I'll go look for it, find it, and then it'll be too late. But, or I will say it next week, next episode. But yeah, there's the archaeologists that actually stated that information that contradicted the standard philosophy, the standard thing. So when they found these computers that seemed to be hundreds, if not thousands of years old, when they found like footprints that's supposed to be 1 million years old, when they found these elongated skulls, when they found the crystal skulls, when they find anything, when they find stone tablets that are showing men riding dinosaurs or other giants, when there are ancient stories of giant skulls being found all over America, and that even that the Native American Indians used to attack the red giants, the redhead giants. When there's information of water weather on the Sphinx, which means that the Sphinx has to be older than 5,000 years because it hasn't rained in Egypt, but more than that, all this stuff should be ignored. When they find when they find buildings under 300 foot of water, that means, which is over 300,000 years since it's been above water, all these artifacts should be ignored. So there's the Brookings report and this other one, which I can't remember off the top of my head, the actual name of it, but they're all saying that when we find this stuff, ignore it. Don't talk about it, because it would literally destroy society. That's what, at least at one point, when these things were put into place, that's what they believed, that it could that we can't handle the truth. And wasn't it, oh, Jack Nicholson, you can't handle the truth. That movie. So,
I wanted to say something too about the pyramids underneath the water and it being underwater, and it makes a lot of sense because from my understanding, we used to be one planetary landmass, and as our consciousness kind of fractured, so did the land into 7 continents or whatnot. And now we're going to be slowly going back into one as our collective consciousness becomes more unified. We'll eventually go back to one landmass. I mean, I don't know if that takes evolutionary time or whatnot, but I do know there's going to be a lot more land changes because like the water has to shift. What's underwater, will become land again, and then water is going to shift to where where land is now. It has to shift because we need to almost like rejuvenize the water to have a whole lot more life in it to really sustain a much more nourishing or fruitful planet eventually, like to match our internal states. Eventually the external world has to match, but that's because we are the land. So as we continue to shift within us, so will the external, like we're doing it together. And it's interesting because I think we're going to see a whole lot more things that we thought pyramids that are underwater and all that like start to emerge, and then people are going to say like, what the hell, like we have to investigate all these new things that are popping up out of nowhere. It's just going to be fascinating seeing what we have to learn, because in order to know that information, like in order to like actually take on that information, understand like why do we have the pyramids, why do we have all these things on the ground, there's a whole lot more history that like we have to learn that only we can find and tap into and remember what truly went on and what we did collectively together as just pure consciousness. We can't really blame it on anybody else, but that's the beautiful part. We can change it. We're able to shift how we've kind of raped Mother Nature and raped our own consciousness, really. But
yeah. I had heard about that, about the landmass, about it being together and then separate. I mean, that historically is already known, like they show us, but that the earth does reflect us, who we are, because we are the earth, right? But I wanted to talk again about since they're hiding these pyramids, right? Now we're talking about conspiracies here, but it's not really conspiracy because they're there. It's real. So they hidden this from our consciousness, right? So that we don't expand our consciousness by perceiving something else that we didn't know existed. If these pyramids existed for way, way longer than we even think, then to find out that information, you have to have already known from a long time ago, like it's been passed down through generations and generations. Like, how do you know that information? It gets lost over that much time unless it's been kept, And so if they had know this information for so long, they're hiding it to keep us in a more primitive state of mind or a more primitive conscious state. And then this is what I was thinking. I'm like, is that why? Because that explains to me another thing as to, like, for example, when I was in school and they taught us about MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., all the pictures that you see are in black and white, but they had color photography back then.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So why do they show you only black and white photos? Because they want you to think it's older. They want the mind to be more in a, like, I would call it a primitive state than being, awakened. So because that's just fucking weird. That's just, why would they do that? And nobody has ever questioned it, right? Because people don't think they think, it's old. It's an old picture. So they expect it to be black and white. So it's just and then it comes back to the theory that I had come up with on Ibble about fashion, which is, totally different, but fashion, like how they say history repeats itself, and fashion always repeats itself. And they always bring back the 80s and the 70s. They recycle this fashion. They can be creating new fashion, which people are now with this Ascension, people are creating new fashion, EMF clothes that protect you from all of the radiation that we're being bombarded with. And so things are changing, but it's a dramatic shift from being fed like this story or this thing about you, what your reality is, that you are not advanced, that you came from, you know, like an ape, and that you're just barely like a, we are advanced beings, we're super super advanced, but we have forgotten that, and it has been suppressed purposely. And so I don't know if we'll ever discover why. But I mean, it's just a whole lot.
Well, we veiled ourselves, really. Honestly, we continue to do this to ourselves. It's really hard because like we think about it from like a personal, like individualized perspective. We think of it as like the whole world, one world soul. We're all just one being, but we just don't have the awareness of it right now. But we decided to veil ourselves. We decided to play down in consciousness and de-evolutionize ourselves. And you know, whatever was within us, like for instance, like, you know, corrupted people and whatnot, like we needed other people to other aspects of ourselves to play those roles, to play like Hitler, to play, you know, whatever else. I don't know, I can't think of anything, but you know, but we needed that because we needed to see what our consciousness was holding, you know, to see ourselves. And so someone has to play that role. I'm glad it wasn't necessarily me in this fractal like but yeah, I honestly, it's, if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, we decided to veil it. We decided to trick ourselves and make ourselves go through all this pain, all this suffering, just so that we can eventually go back to source. Eventually, we have to experience, you know, the extreme polar contrast of who we truly are. We truly are love. We truly are source. You know, we're those higher dimensional beings, but we decided to forget about it all. And that's, I feel like that's the only way to go back to source, you know, eventually, is to experience all this. So in a way, this is all of it from one perspective could all be love. It all can be a loving thing it all depends on how large of a scope you're taking in of information when you kind of look at it. You know, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and you know, you're talking about like what Lord evil in the world, like, well, I would call evil like Hitler, right? Somebody who has a lot of darkness. But if you want to think about it like contrast, right? Like black and white, there's darkness and there's light here in this reality. And we are the darkness. So if there's an opposite to everything, then every beginning has an end. So the beginning of us, but I mean, energy is infinite, so we say that there's no end.
No beginning, no end.
But there's an end to it here in this reality, like in this third dimension. You know what I mean? Like when we leave the body, I guess. But if the beginning was the end, what if the beginning was the end? You know what I mean? Like, because the beginning was the end, because it was the end of us knowing our fullness, like wholeness, you know, or you know what I mean? I'm just rambling.
Oh, good.
So I have a question for you guys. We've been talking for a while. So this is a question for our listeners, for whoever's listening, if they want to expand their expand their consciousness and tap into that. What would you suggest? How do they do that? Like, how do you expand your consciousness? It's just you just read books, watch YouTube.
I'll go ahead, I guess. So I think the most important, the most effective, I'm all about like optimization. I need to I don't have a lot of time. I don't have time to do like rituals or anything like that. I just don't have the time. So I have to figure out how to continue to raise my frequency with a busy schedule, with not actually having any ritual. I think, and then the most effective way for me has always been clearing the emotional density within our bodies. Because as you continue to observe yourself and clear all the triggers, all the fears, all the childhood wounding, go into it and really dive deep into it. Don't personalize it. Just look at it for what it is. Just feel the feelings without the storyline. You know, the ego wants to create the story, but it's coming up for a reason. You know, bless every single trigger as a gift. It's giving you an opportunity to really see yourself and see where you're not in your mastery. And through clearing the emotional body, we truly will just raise our frequency faster and faster and faster. And because our thoughts generate, but our emotions materialize. So it's important to be aware of the emotional body, because like where your emotional body is at now is dictating your future, dictating what scenarios you're going to have to face in order to, like, for instance, if you're not willing to look at your, I don't know, abandonment issues or whatever, you're going to continue to have situations brought up in your future because you're not willing to clear that emotional stuck energy. And so if you can just observe yourself and feel whatever comes up when you have the opportunity to feel it, you'll save yourself a lot of time where you don't have to continue to have experiences to be the catalyst to bring up within you that you weren't aware of because we just don't see ourselves, you know? And I think, you know, obviously that and staying grounded and trying not to project onto people the best you can and really just flowing with the energies. I feel like the more you resist, the slower you become more stagnant. Things get harder and harder. But if you just flow with it, surrender your ego, surrender your mind, surrender everything that you believe yet you are. Surrender to the situation, surrender to your control issues and all that kind of stuff. Basically all the stuff that we all carry because we all have the same, you know, energetic blueprint. That's, for me, has been the truest, like, fastest shift I've made is through really focusing on the emotional stuff. But all the other stuff is great too. But to me, that's been, I think, the hardest thing to work on, and obviously takes the most effort. And looking at it from a neutral perspective is the hardest, you know, really the hardest thing for most people to do. But I think it's the most rewarding for sure. Yeah.
But what about you, Sifu? What advice? That was amazing, John. Thank you so much for that. That's wonderful advice. I love how you just flow and just go with it. It's great advice. Everybody take notes, okay? What about you, Sifu? What can people do to expand their consciousness and tap into that energy?
That's the whole point of this universe. There's so many ways, there's so many ways to do it. But one of the Taoist ways is to remember, what if your consciousness really is the size of a universe? It's formless and shapeless. And it's that vast. And the illusion, we think we're this. We think we're only as big as this. So there's the Taoist concept of breathing in the chi and breathing out the cha. So you breathe in the chi, the energy, the expansion. You allow yourself to grow, and you allow yourself to learn more and more and more. Breathe out the cha, the stress, the worry, what you no longer need. And every time you breathe out, you make space, you make more room. But there is unlimited room. But the more you breathe, the more you expand, the more you glow, the more you grow. So breathing in that chi, allow your awareness to expand more and more and more. And breathing out that cha, let go of what you no longer need, what you no longer need to know. But as any good Taoist should say, hey, what do I know? More importantly, Luna, how about you? What would you say?
Well, like you said, breathe in the good shit, breathe out the bad shit. In other words. Oh yeah, expanding your consciousness is like, and tapping into your infinite consciousness is a practice. It's something that you do daily. You're consistently attached, you're connected to the energy because you are the energy. So the difference is, are you aware that you're connected, or are you just on autopilot? Because the wonderful mechanism that is our body has the ability to be on autopilot. And so, are you really connecting with the present moment? I think that when you are connected with the present moment, you can feel the presence, and you can hear the presence, because that consciousness will speak to your heart, and tell you what ways that you need to heal, what you need to heal. Connecting with what John said, healing is like a major part as well, because if there are certain things that are not healed within you, that maybe you're unaware of them, maybe they're in your subconscious, but they will create quote unquote blockages. They're imaginary blockages because they're perceived blockages. They're not really a blockage, I don't think, at least in my perception. But when you hold these energies, they create these blockages, and you won't be able to really flow and connect with source. So healing your trauma and letting go of that dense energy, I think also is very, very important. It also will help you ascend. So yeah, I also wanted to, I wrote something down that I thought was really, really cool right before we log off. It was what Sifu was saying. He was talking, I don't know what you were saying, something about you said the word God, right? Oh yeah, we are made in the image and likeness of God, right? So this is something that I love, that I always say, because that helps you remember your power, your consciousness. And I wrote down, we are holograms of God. we're holograms of God, right? If we're a light image, a light reflection of it. So that's what the holographic theory really is here to show us, right?
God is experiencing itself through all of us,
through and as you too.
Yeah. But I think we become more of that light, as we continue to release that density, because you're making space in your body so that more light can come in, more of spirit, more of, that divine spark can start to be expressed through you. But you can only do that in the heart space, right? You can't, if it's a thought, if it's coming from the mind, we can't do it. That's still our ego mind. That's still our lower artificial self in a way, and that's the hard part. The hard part is staying in the heart, where it's completely unconditional love, neutrality. And that's where I think that's truly the brain, and the brain, because the actual mind or the brain is supposed to be our servant, but we've made it our master. And so now we like go back to the heart-based living. And I think that's one of the hardest, most challenging things, but yeah.
Did you know? So in the human body, there's a thing called the fascia. And the fascia is this, it's almost like orange pith, in the body. Now, for hundreds of years, when doctors looked at dead bodies, all they saw was this, and they thought, oh, it's just a tissue, it's just muscle tissue. But when they actually had the technology to look at living bodies, they actually found that the fascia, it's in between the muscle and the epidermis, the skin. So in between those two is this fascia, and it connects the whole body, every single muscle, all over the body is the fascia. And it actually contains light. They actually find it was like fiber optics, and it actually had light running through it. I still don't fully understand why, but when we talk about being of light, you literally are light. You have light running through your body. And that doesn't include the electrical pulses of the brain, the electric that runs all through the brain. The heart literally generates an electrical and magnetic field. But you are energy. You are pure energy. Every single cell can actually generate 0.5 volts of electricity. Every single cell. So there's enough energy in the human body to literally probably generate the whole energy for the planet. I mean, every single pure energy and pure light. Now tell me you're limited.
That's interesting you say that about the fascia. I didn't know that. The only thing I knew about the fascia was, that it conducts way faster than your neurological system and your neurons, and they're actually showing a lot of your immune system goes to the fascia. But I did not know about the light. That's very
Well, it's only since I think it was 2000s that they did live, not autopsy, because obviously dead with autopsy, but live operations, and they could actually see with the cameras the fascia living. And because one thing they realized that it seemed to be less elastic when you died, it starts to brittle, it starts to become very weak. So they wanted to see it when it was living. And when they started looking at it living, they actually found light passing through it, and it was and they said it's very similar to fiber optics. That is literally light, electrical impulses, light passing through your fascia. And the biggest thing with the fascia is that it's conscious. Well, it's affected by your conscious. That most other muscles can be, electrically moved or whatnot. The fascia is the one thing that actually is controlled by your conscious. So like in yoga or Taoist yoga, which is Qigong, we actually talk about being aware of your fascia and actually moving it and expanding with it. And that's why Taoist yoga, Qigong, you actually breathe and contract. You expand and so stretch and then pull back in and move, with your breath, because that actually affects the fascia even more, and it actually allows the fascia to move as one. But yeah, it's amazing. We're still, but that's the point. We're still learning. There's always more to learn. We think we know it all, and then we find out something more. And that's the thing in quantum physics. The smaller they look, the more they find. They keep finding more stuff. And like we look into space, we keep finding more galaxies. We keep finding more universe, because I think it is an infinity. I think it is. There is no end. We'll keep finding more stuff. That's the point. The more you look, the more you find.
Or are we creating those things that we're finding because we're searching for it?
Yeah, the more because you're looking, because you're measuring, you're looking, so things appear, they go from a wave to an actual thing that you can see.
Well, that's where the quantum physicists have got to. They're now actually saying, you keep looking, you'll find more stuff. Which is blowing, that goes into a whole new realm. So, who's creating this stuff? The more you look, the more you find.
We are.
The universe you go, the more there is. Who's creating it all? Where's it coming from?
Yeah, it reminds me of a saying that I used to say back in the day when girls would be like going through their boyfriend's phone and finding things. I'm like, if you go digging for dirt, you're gonna get dirty. You're gonna find what you're looking for, regardless. But I guess that was me channeling, but in a different way from back then. The thing about the fascia is so interesting. I hadn't heard about that, of having light, running through it, of it being alive. I know that, and emotions can be trapped in the fascia, so that's why massage therapy and all that is really good. But emotions are energy, But I think that is probably the reason why when people have some type of spiritual awakening and they make all these changes, that they are literally glowing. Like they glow. You can see a shine, I think that there's that, like, we're actually glowing. So that's cool.
Or after sex.
Yeah, exactly.
when women get pregnant, it's the same thing. Oh, you're glowing. But well, the interesting thing on that is, for me, is when you understand that they medically found that the pineal gland is actually an eye, and it actually sees infrared and ultraviolet. So when you say people are glowing, what are they glowing? What is it that we're actually, because it's not necessarily glowing as in like radioactive, but what are we seeing? Are we seeing something
like
else?
An auric field.
That it's becoming strong enough that we pick it up and we that person's glowing, they're radiating. Mother Teresa Gandhi was said to be, people sensed them from a whole village away. That their aura, their energy was so bright, that was so powerful, that people just could almost see them. They almost knew. And in the old Christian and Buddhist and Hindu pictures, you see, the aura. You see people's aura glowing, and it's like, is they raising their light, raising their vibration? Are they raising their consciousness, expanding it enough so you can actually see it?
I think eventually we continue to raise our frequency, right? And we'll eventually our light body will become more dominant. And so I think over time, we'll see more and more people who are really starting to glow more, and then more, and then more. And eventually I think lay our physical flesh bodies down, but our light bodies will still be standing. And a lot of ancient texts, I think, kind of explains that too. And then they've said like they literally turned into light right in front of me, and this and that, and it's very interesting.
In Tibet, both in China and Tibet. So in China, it's called diamond body ascension, where like you look at diamonds, you see all the colors of the rainbow. In Tibet, it's rainbow body ascension, all the colors of the rainbow, all the colors of the darkness. But there's actually documented cases of monks turning into light, or them seeing rainbows over their monastery or where they are, and then they go there, and the monks disappeared, or there's only a tiny little like statue, almost like like little thing left. But there's I think it's about 1,500 documented cases of rainbow body ascension in Tibet.
That's a lot. Wow.
Actually ascend. And
so eventually we're all gonna ascend that way. Is that what they meant by,
I think it's on the cards. I think it's definitely an option. I think that, like if you go to the story of Christ, is that did he die then ascend? And or did he never really die? He was just sleeping. That his body was going for a sleeping process, and he's regenerated. Now it's time to do whatever I'm going to do next. But is what again, that whole thing about if there are other realities, ascension is ascension, just moving from one reality. 17 prophecies, read 17 prophecies, and at the end he disappears, but he doesn't actually disappear. He just moves into another higher frequency where he's still alive as that form, but nobody else can see him.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, it's so interesting. Okay, well, our next episode we're gonna be getting into some conspiracy theories. So I think there's a lot of things that we probably already may have sparked in our minds from this conversation with the whole CIA documents. I can't wait to hear more about the CIA documents from Sifu and John. I know you have a lot of things on your mind too. So we're going to get into this. If there's any questions that you guys want to know, let us know in the comments. Make sure to like and comment and follow and subscribe. Okay. You already know. So Sifu and John, where can people find you on Instagram? I didn't do the tags last time. Go ahead.
I'm just Jay Wojtek at Instagram, I guess. Yeah. Or just type in John Wojtek, Wojtek. I'm sure you can have it on the links. Or Facebook. And I really don't go on social media much. Ibble was the most I've ever been on in the past year. And that's kind of short-lived, it seems like. Yeah.
I think it'll continue. I have hopes for it.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I hope. I liked it, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So anyway, for me, so Sifu SIFU Boggie BOGGIE on Instagram, or just look that up on YouTube. You'll find that, or look it up on Facebook and you'll find that. So pretty much Sifu Boggie, pretty much everywhere.
Yes, Sifu Boggie everywhere. Okay. Well, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So much fun. Can't wait for next episode. This is a 4-part series for the people who don't know. Who knows? It might get extended. We'll see. But anyways, until next time, mucho love.
Bye.